So I've been getting a question over and over again over the past 4 weeks, and you probably are asking it too. I know I am. And the question is, what can I actually do right now that makes a real difference in terms of the uncertainty and the volatility and the chaos that's starting to unfold in our world? And I want to be so clear that this is a question that is not easily answered. And I do not sit on the corner of knowing saying I figured it all out. However, I am committed to dig deeply and explore with you this question. And I'm going to do that in offering a series of small chats. I call them chats from my front porch because that's where I sit and channel and receive responses to these questions that are not going to be pinned down in terms of do this and that, but instead they're living questions, questions that start to work us from the inside out. Because in our engagement, that is where we actually live our way into a solution, a different way of being. But I want to say that here's what I do know with great humility. This is what I do know. That when we encounter rapid change, where things start to dissolve and fall apart, of course, we have our own innate response to change and uncertainty, and that is hardwired in our brain. And yet, when we cultivate a different state of being, it allows us to begin to perceive a different world that's around us. We are not ignoring what's happening, but we are committed to create a new world, one that is counter to much of the unrest that we may be experiencing. Secondly, I do know that your consciousness matters. Your consciousness makes a difference. And this is perhaps what is most pivotal right now in our times, because we've been comfortable or accustomed to believing that consciousness, spirituality, meditation, and prayer does nothing. And it does more than we can quantify. And actually, there's great research coming forward that actually is quantifying the actual impact that your consciousness makes. And so when you sit down to meditate or pray or center, your mind may say this is doing absolutely nothing. And that is the very belief that we are called to change right now. Because the paradigm that is coming forward, in my own estimation, is part of the rise of the divine feminine that works in a very different way than what we have known for the past 500 years. And we are invited to start to join a different way of being, a different way of influencing and creating new systems that's not going to look like the way that we've done it before. And when you cultivate a deep and wise inner state within, this is the very first step that you can take to actually making a difference. Your consciousness influences more than you can quantify, and it will start to change those around you and make the world that you want. Third, we are at a precipice in which we can no longer go at it alone. Hyperindividualism is starting to decline, and there is a collective, interconnected web that we must start to access in order to know how we create change. And when we actually enter more of expanded consciousness, in other words, our ordinary waking mind is not chatting and going on as usual. We are in more of an open, expanded state, and we are encountering a different reality. That is where we begin to know that you and I are not separate from one another. And that state of interconnection is what's going to create a new world, because we no longer need to hold the heavy burden of responsibility for individual change. I hope this can come as a relief for you, who perhaps feels burdened by what you can do on your own. The fact that you run up against that feeling of, I don't know how to change things anymore, or I'm feeling overwhelmed by the volume of what's happening, and I no longer feel like I matter or could make a difference, is purposeful, because perhaps you're not meant to. And I say that with such love. Instead, there is a collective movement that is birthing right now among us, in which we will know that the separation and the divide that our mind perceives between you and me is part of the problem. And the solution will come when we begin to access interconnection. So this is what I want to chat with you about in the coming weeks, to actually develop an alchemy together, of how we begin to transform at a substance level deep within us that isn't just for our own personal edification. Instead, it actually does create change, often in terms of direct action, but it's not going to be the way our minds expect. And that is a source for celebration. Because if there's anything that I am taking away from the rapid change, is that we can no longer go back to the old wells that have perhaps served us in the past, but are no longer bringing forward good life for you and for me, and especially for our planet. When we allow ourselves to expand our consciousness beyond just our own self and what we need, and we start to expand into knowing that there is a greater good and a collective whole that is part of this unfolding process, even as it is so uncomfortable, then we find a deeper resilience and a capacity within ourselves to really push the edges of innovation, to start to see beyond the solutions that come pretty easily and quickly, but we know they don't land as being right. And if this stirs you and compels you to say that yes, you do want to make a difference in your life, you want your life to be better, you want your relationships to be clear and clean, you want your finances to be steady and solid, you want your health to be robust and vital, and you want your spirituality to blossom, then I invite you to listen to this upcoming series of conversations. I'll be chatting with you in a real and authentic way, not from a pedestal that says I've figured it out, but instead it's a living conversation, a call to say, how can you make your life better, and indirectly start to make our world better as well.